You're joined now by Steve Gardner from USA Today covering baseball. What's up, Steve?
Hey, Ravi, how are you?
Steve, good morning, man. I joked, but I mean we might as well start here. I'm a diehard Dodgers fan, losing 3 out of 4. I've hit that little red button. It's not the easy button, it's the panic button. No, I'm kidding. But all jokes aside, that I do think the NL West is gonna be pretty sensational. Irrespective of what the Dodgers are doing now, how good do you think the rest of that division will be over the long haul?
I think it'll be great. And the fact that the Giants now
Mm.
have entered the mix, I did not see that coming. I kind of felt like the Diamondbacks would be very good this year and be a playoff team. The Padres could be competitive and should be competitive. But to have the Giants off to the start that they've gotten off to at 8-2, that makes that division even more of a meat grinder. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that shakes all out.
So, Steve, is there anybody in that division that you don't? That I mean, you got three teams with 8 or 9 wins already. Out of San Diego, San Francisco, and then Los Angeles, are there any of those three teams you don't necessarily buy? Like, is the hot start from San Francisco real?
Yeah, I think the jury's got to be still out on that. Buster Posey comes in and does some things maybe that some people, analysts that look at things in a very analytical and sabermetric way um, don't really get, but yet somehow or another, he always seems to win as a player. Now as an executive, it looks like some of that magic is following him along. So you look up and down that Giants lineup, and I don't know that it strikes fear into your heart.
Mm.
The starting rotation is good with Logan Webb at the top, but I don't know if the rest of those pitchers, or the bullpen for that matter, really makes you say, "Uh-oh, watch out for these guys." They're just getting it done. They're winning the close games, and so far this season have been one of the most pleasant surprises in baseball.
I get the quiet little pickup of guys like Jake Berger and things like that for the Rangers. But when you look at them playing for the long haul, can you talk about them separate from the division, or are you going to talk about them because of their division?
No, I think the Rangers have some good things going. I mean, Corey Seager could be an MVP candidate. One of the leading MVP candidates if he can just stay healthy. You look at what he did when the Rangers, went to the World Series and won the World Series, and Corey Seager was the MVP. I mean, when he's on the field, he's fantastic. So you can build around him. I mean, he's only 30 years old right now, and then you've got the younger guys. Wyatt Langford is a potential superstar there in Texas. So I think they've got a nice base of young players and veteran players and a decent enough rotation. I think really when you talk about the Rangers' success, certainly this year, it really relies on whether Jacob deGrom stays healthy or not.
Mm.
And if he can give them, 120 to 150 innings of typical Jacob deGrom pitching, that's going to take them an awful long way, and certainly he could carry them in the playoffs.
So, Steve, obviously we've talked about some of the acquisitions, whether the Rangers or, obviously the Dodgers had a big offseason as well. But 10, 12 games into the season, do you look at any of the teams and the moves they made in the offseason and say, oh, they clearly did the best in terms of filling their needs?
Well, I mean, it's easy to say that the Mets did that
Sure.
when you get a difference maker like Juan Soto. I think some of the other teams that were kind of on the bubble that had the possibility of taking another step forward. I look at a team like the Twins that was very close to being a playoff team in a weak division that didn't really do anything. The Orioles also a very very strong team that really didn't do a whole lot, especially on the pitching side where they need help in the starting rotation. So I think that's part of the discussion right now is some of the teams that had the opportunities to maybe take that step forward. I think if you're looking at teams that actually did, the Boston Red Sox are a great example. And to go out and get Garrett Crochet and have some of the young players that they have coming up through the system, this is a potentially very, very good team. So I think maybe if you're talking about winners and losers from the off season, the Red Sox and Mets would probably be at the top of my list.
So, Steve, just full disclosure, big Red Sox fan here. So, appreciate that answer, first of all. But,
you got it. Yep.
So, you mentioned Garrett Crochet. I've got two questions on the Red Sox here. Number one, am I crazy to think that Walker Buehler might end up being the best addition from the offseason? And two, are any of the offseason additions going to be as impactful as Christian Campbell, Roman Anthony, Marcelo Mayer when all three of those finally end up in the big leagues?
For the record, guys, I love all the Bueller and Corey Seager talk this morning. My two favorite non-Dodgers of the last 10 years. So I appreciate it, you guys. Go ahead.
I mean, you got Snell. Never mind.
Yeah. Fudge.
Anyway, so those two questions on the Red Sox, and then we'll move on to other things.
I mean, I don't know. Walker Buehler is. I think that was more of a hope than an actual smart signing for the Red Sox. I mean, we saw his potential before the latest surgery, and I think maybe it was a mirage last year in the playoffs. I don't know what to expect from him, and he has not shown a whole lot so far in a Red Sox uniform. In terms of off-season additions for Boston, I think Alex Bregman could be a huge acquisition.
Yeah, we thought he was washed, right? I mean,
he looked pretty good. He looked pretty good so far.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could see once they signed him, it was like a light bulb went on for a lot of people. Like, oh wow, he isn't only just good in Houston; he could be really good in Fenway too with his swing. So I think that was one of the things where, he's getting up there in years, he's past 30, but he's still got a lot of juice left in him. And I think too, the clubhouse demeanor, we could have had a real meltdown when the Red Sox signed him and had Rafael Devers there. We saw the possibility of that in spring training bubbling up. But I think Bregman is such a good clubhouse guy that he is able to work himself in and become a part of that team to where they understand he's all about winning and doing what's best for the team. And really what's best for the team is having him play Gold Glove third base. So, yeah, I think he could be a huge addition. And if you get Christian Campbell and Roman Anthony and Marcelo Mayer coming up and contributing, this could be a very good Red Sox team.
Okay, so Steven, similar to the Rangers question, this may be a little more difficult because of the perceived mediocrity. But can regionally, locally, all the fans that we have, can we talk about the Kansas City Royals and their progress and not talk about the division that they play in?
We do need to talk about that division. And but I will say this. The Royals were my dark horse pick to win the American League this year because I love the fact that, Bobby Witt Jr. is amazing and will win an MVP, maybe multiple MVPs before he's done. I think it was very smart on the Royals' part to get a leadoff hitter, somebody who could get on base in front of Witt. And once you do that, that kind of kicks things in for your offense, makes it much better for Pasquantino and Salvi Perez and the rest of that lineup, which is not great. But when you get the top of that lineup, churning in and getting a lot of, hits and scoring, that'll work, especially with the pitching staff that can be really, really good. I think Kansas City's pitching staff, starting rotation, could rival Seattle and the Dodgers for the best in baseball. And if they do that in that ballpark, is tailored to their roster, I think this is a team that could be very dangerous in the postseason.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the Mariners because I struggle to kind of figure out who Castillo is, and I'm hoping, they get a healthy Kirby back. I feel like I know what I'm getting from Gilbert or Miller, but it just seems like the Mariners are one of those teams. They're not quite the Jays because they've had some success, But it seems like I'm always waiting on the Mariners. Right? Is that just me, or are you kind of vibe with that?
Their fans have been waiting for a World Series for the entire life of the franchise. So I get that vibe, most definitely. And yeah, it's one of those, again, talk about teams that didn't really go out and do anything to address their weaknesses this offseason. The Mariners have the great pitching staff. They just need somebody to hit the ball. And, they could have done any number of things. And yet their only offensive move was to re-sign Jorge Polanco. And I don't think that's going to get it done. No matter what division they play in, they still need to break through. They still need to be able to hit and score runs. And I just don't know that this Mariners team is capable of doing that as it is currently constructed.
We're talking with Steve Gardner from USA Today covering Major League Baseball. Steve, so one of the biggest pieces of news that came out was the rumored agreement between Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and the Toronto Blue Jays, 14 years, $500 million. When you look at, I know what the production says, I know what the stats say. When you look at Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and I guess the body type more than anything, is there any level of hesitation to give a guy that's sort of built that way and struggled with his fitness a little bit a contract that lets him play out until he's, I believe, 40? Like, is there any hesitation there on your part with that deal?
Well, I think we need to take a little bit of a step back on this and see what the Blue Jays have done in trying to sign marquee free agents. Whether it's Roki Sasaki, it's Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani. They have not been able to seal the deal for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And here is somebody who, is a franchise icon right now and is willing to stay in Toronto long term. It's a deal that they can't really afford not to make. Mm. And whether it's a good deal from a financial standpoint or a franchise standpoint is sort of the secondary question. I mean, to have credibility with your fans, you've got to sign Vladimir Guerrero to a long-term contract. And, money is really not the main thing, as crazy as that sounds.
I get
We're
it.
talking about $500 million.
Yeah.
I think he's not going to age that well, but if he's very good for the next 5-6 years or so, then it probably works out in their favor in the long run because he's going to help them get to the playoffs. Hopefully, if they can build around him. Otherwise, he's going to be the Canadian Mike Trout, and this deal hamstrings them from signing anybody else around him for the rest of that period.
Now, Stephen, I'll get you out on this. I like the Cubs and I liked the Cardinals. I thought the Cardinals could be kind of an off-the-radar team if their pitching held together. We'll see what happens with them. But start with the Cubs, and then you got to tell me, and I get that it's early, but the Brewers were my prime candidate for regression, and I'm just not so sure they're not so young that they don't know that they're not supposed to be good. Cap the Central for me a little bit.
All right. We'll start with the Brewers. I mean, we've been writing them off for several years now as Josh Hader leaves and Corbin Burns leaves and all of that.
Devin Williams and Counsell.
Yeah. Exactly. And Pat Murphy's been able to keep them together, and they continue to make do with less. And right now I think they have 2.5 healthy starting pitchers.
Yeah, Savali's out, no Cortez, no Woodruff.
So I don't know how they're going to continue to
I think
do
Tobias Myers is hurt.
Yeah. It's crazy. And they had a bullpen game for their home opener. How sad is that? But still, I really love Jackson Churio. I think he's going to be a franchise cornerstone. But again, this is smoke and mirrors to me for the Brewers.
Okay.
Staying around the 500 mark. The Cubs, I think, are really good, and legitimately, Kyle Tucker is making a difference, from the jump, which a lot of times those big acquisitions in the offseason aren't able to do. But you throw him in with, say, a Suzuki, and Nico Horner is back now, so they look to be pretty much at full strength.
And they have that
and are looking very
unconventional
good.
style still. Like, what do you think the scout looks like getting ready for the Brewers? Chaos on the base pass. It's just the way they play is fascinating.
Yeah, and as for the Cardinals too, I think this is a club that is just it's a transition season for them, and I'm sorry to say for Cardinals fans, but John Mozeliak is going to be out the door at the end of this season. They try and make one last run, and it's been a pretty decent start for them, but I can see them trading Ryan Helsley. I can see them, kind of breaking it all down if things go south and the starting pitching collapses mid-season. I can see the Cardinals selling and trying to start fresh next year. So this division is definitely the Cubs to win or the Cubs to lose. I think they're in a good position to do that.
Okay, real quick, because Ravi tried to get me to go here in the preseason, and I didn't take the bait. All in or all out on the Reds as a dark horse?
I think the Reds are an interesting team and a fun team to watch, with the likes of Hunter Green throwing 100 in the ninth inning last night and Ellie De La Cruz doing, the things that he can do. But I just don't see them being a serious contender this season. They're going to need to get deeper. They're going to need some of the young players in the farm system to come up and play roles. I see them just trying to figure out what they have, which is kind of like what they did last year. But I think the process continues, and I don't know if they're, once they reach possible fringe contention, the big question for Cincinnati is ownership going to spend to get them over the top? And I don't know that will be the case. So right now they're fun and interesting, but I don't think they're serious.
Steve, last thing for me here. Out of sort of the dregs of the league, the White Sox, the Athletics, and the Rockies, do any of those three teams have, maybe not even this year, but hope for the future that you can kind of shine a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for any of those three teams, or are they all three just in purgatory for the foreseeable future?
No, I think the A's are the most in purgatory in terms of a franchise. But if you look at the roster,
they look a little plucky, don't they?
I really like some of the guys.
I kind of do too.
Lawrence Butler had a fantastic second half of last year. He has superstar potential. And Tyler Soderstrom, couple of home runs last night. He's tied for the major league lead. It kind of typifies the no-name but pretty scrappy, pretty good kind of player that they have on that team. And they did make a little bit of an investment in Luis Severino, and they signed Butler, I think, to a longer-term deal. So there is some semblance of optimism there, but I do not have a whole lot of confidence in the tip-top ownership to be able to make that work in the long run.
That's our guy, Steve Gardner, USA Today. Steve, appreciate the time. As always, great stuff.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks so much, guys. Take care.